Good evening. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another webinar. We run these every few weeks. So I'm really happy that you've joined us tonight. Got over almost 300 people registered for tonight. So should be an interesting session. Cannabis edibles are something that are very close to my heart personally. So I'm really excited about this evening's webinar. So just a bit of background. I started using edibles about 10 years ago. I do occasionally smoke cannabis, but I was finding that smoking wasn't really working for me in the way I wanted it to. And I started eating chocolate. I'd made pancakes when I was younger and all kinds of crazy things. But I got to a stage where I started using edibles regularly as opposed to smoking, because there are a lot of advantages to edibles. And so those are some of the things we'll talk about at the moment. So I'm very passionate about edibles as a way to consume cannabis. And certainly internationally, they are growing rapidly. They'll also growing very fast in South Africa. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of insight into edibles and what they are. So edibles effectively are anything from beverages to things that we eat. The little guy on the bottom right is a gummy bear, quite a well-known edible. I don't know how gummy bears became edibles, but that's just the way it happened. And then there's all kinds of things up to sort of cake, muffins, brownies, chocolate bars, lollipops, you name it. You can literally make an edible out of everything. But there are definitely some things to consider. The edibles industry is growing, rapidly at the moment. And these are some stats about the size of it. What edibles are also doing is allowing people who don't want to smoke, have never smoked before, to engage with cannabis in a non-intrusive way. So the edibles industry is really exploding. Also, an older market who want to take THC to help them with certain ailments. Edibles are being used for that. I think it's important to understand that edibles are used recreationally, but edibles are also used medicinally. So you can buy edibles internationally that are actually stated as medicinal edibles. Because it's a different way to consume it. But you'll see from the numbers there that it certainly is an industry that's not going away. It's getting bigger and bigger. And just in terms of edibles and how they work, the biggest challenge with edibles is the time it takes for them to take effect. And this is one of the challenges we have in terms of people taking too much. So you're supposed to wait a minimum of an hour. Again, it depends on your metabolism, the size of your body. It depends on whether you've eaten beforehand. There are all kinds of things that can affect how fast an edible actually impacts your body. So the biggest misconception with edibles is I take my edible, 45 minutes later, I'm not feeling anything, so I snack another one. Now, what that happens is effectively you're stacking the THC on top of the first one. So you have the first one, it starts to kick in after an hour. You've got impatient, so you take another one, and an hour into the second hour into the first one, the second one kicks in, and you've just had too much. The difference between smoking and edibles in terms of the high is when you're eating edibles, it's a much deeper body experience. So you get a real body high. Your whole body takes that high, whereas when you're smoking cannabis, it is more of a head high. So it's a very different feeling. And some people prefer smoking. They prefer the high that you get from smoking. Others prefer the high from edibles. Some people go between the two. And it is a much longer high, so you can't control it in the same way you can control smoking. If you smoke cannabis, it can last anywhere from sort of an hour to 2-3 hours. And you'll often find smokers, within an hour or two, they keep having a few puffs just to keep the high up. Whereas with edibles, once you're in, it can last 4 to 6 hours. If you take a bit much, it can last longer. And the difference is the way it processes. It's processed in the liver. And effectively, the delta 9 THC is converted into what's called 11-hydroxy THC. So it metabolizes in a different way in the body. And this is why if you take too much, the high can be really overwhelming. It's incredibly important if you have edibles in your house to keep them away from kids. They look like chocolate. They are chocolate. They look like sweets. And it's very important that wherever they are, ideally they're in a locked cupboard. It's super important, and also to keep them away from pets. Pets have a much deeper endocannabinoid system than humans, a lot more receptors, so pets can die from cannabis. So really important to keep those away. And one of the things that the industry is trying to figure out at the moment is what we call how we make this high come in quicker. So microparticles and nanoemulsion technology is being explored at the moment to try and make that high come on a little bit quicker. In terms of dosing, this is taken from Leafly. They're a very reliable source for cannabis education. Dosing is something I'm very passionate about because we really do not have dosing right in South Africa at the moment. You'll see on the top here, 1.2 to 5 milligrams is considered to be a microdose, and then it goes up. And again, it depends on your metabolism, depends on the size of your body. But I have seen a lot of edibles in South Africa that are 50 to 100 milligrams. I have a big issue with that because most people cannot handle that amount of THC, especially people who are doing it for the first time. A very, very experienced user can take 500 to 50 to 100, but you give, I couldn't take 50 milligrams would knock me out. And dosing is something that if you're going to take edibles, you really need to spend some time looking at that. We're going to unpack that in the session with our guests. There are a lot of products on the market at the moment in South Africa that have no dosing on them, and if they do, they are overdosed, and ultimately that gives edibles a bad name. If you have a bad experience on edibles, you can get anxiety, you can get super stressed out, you cannot die, because as you may or may not know, you cannot die or overdose on THC, but it can be a really horrendous experience when you actually think you're going to die and the world is going to end. So dosing is important, and we're going to address that with our panelists. You can also tackle overdosing on edibles by hydrating, going for a walk, peppercorns. The terpenes in the peppercorns can counterbalance CBD. You can take CBD to counterbalance the THC. Take a bath, distract yourself. The thing to do is if someone's had too many edibles and you're with them, is just to keep them calm and just to talk them through it. They will live. Ultimately, we want a happy experience from edibles, not a sad experience. So without further ado, let's crack on with our guests. Our first guest is from New York City. He runs a company called Scandalous. Scandalous are an edibles brand that come out of New York. They do chocolate, and he's going to talk to us a bit about how they work in that territory. But before we start, I just want to show you a promo video that they've made. Just shows you the kind of level that some of the companies are operating on in the States. So I'm going to play that for you now, and then Miguel should be joining us. Miguel, how are you doing?
How are you? Nice to see you, Trent.
Nice to see you too, all the way live from New York. Thank you so much for joining us on this webinar.
My pleasure.
We're going to get straight into it. I showed the video because I just wanted to give an example to the people watching of the kind of quality. It's a really funky, well-shot video. There's been some, I can see you've invested a lot of time and energy into that. I can see that your music background as a producer has definitely helped. Because those skills are really important. Let's just talk quickly about Scandalous. Just tell us what Scandalous is, and then I want to dig into the edibles industry in the States.
Certainly. So Scandalous came about as a result of the lack of a really good product when it comes to edibles, chocolate specifically. For me, having a culinary background, my mom's a chef, so I really take it to heart that there was such crap out on the marketplace. And I was just determined to come up with a better product, a better chocolate, a better experience. And what Scandalous is, it takes my musical background, my production background, and forges it together. And we like to say THC, rock and roll, it really is all and chocolate is really what you need. So that's sort of the basis behind it. We felt like it was a good formula, and so far so good.
Amazing. Let's talk about edibles in America because they have taken off incredibly over the past few years. Obviously, your legislation is different to ours, so it is legal to have edibles and to buy edibles. But how did that transition happen from the underground to the legal market? And what is the balance between the legal and the illegal market? Because there's obviously still those discrepancies.
Sure. So I mean, we have states, right? So each state sort of is in charge of its own legislation and its sort of ability to regulate what it does or does not in the cannabis market. California was our biggest, and Washington was our biggest like pioneer, I would say. So they spent about 10 years sort of coming from an underground situation into a legal situation and kind of going through all the roadblocks and understanding, what it takes to kind of bring it into the marketplace. Like you said, the edibles market is blowing up here now, especially during COVID. We're just seeing that it's a much better experience, healthier experience. It's being more accepted, I think, in society. So that's a really big push, but it's been a bunch of years in the making, I would say.
And in terms of the market that are getting into edibles, in the States, are these traditional people that have always been into cannabis, or do you find that edibles has opened up a totally new market there?
Well, it's funny because the transition really took the underground folks to really invest in a legal way of doing it, but there's still a lot of hiccups, I think, when it comes to that. So we're finding that the next wave, the second wave of investors, of pioneers, are a little more attentive. The classical sort of stoner, unfortunate the label that comes along with that, to an extent, was sort of true in this first sort of blast. So there's been an evolution, and I think it's going to continue to evolve into a much more sturdy industry. I think go ahead.
Yeah, well, what's the perception there? So there's edibles. If you traditionally look at them, most people think they're just to get you, as high as possible and have a good time. But when I was in LA in September last year, I bought a lot of edibles that were called medicinal edibles, medicinal cannabis. Microdosing on 2.5 milligrams. Then you can titrate it up. Is the perception there that edibles are a form of medicinal cannabis, or is it just purely seen as recreational?
No, it's. I think there's a push for both sectors, but the medicinal side is really coming to light now. We're only starting to see, with the ripple effects. But for example, with Scandalous, we've reached people from 21 to 80. We're finding that all of them, everyone uses it individually. It's really an individual choice on how what you choose to do with it. Whether you take a lot to get your to get to that final feeling, or you microdose throughout the day. But we're finding that people are incorporating that into their lifestyles. And it's becoming much more of a personal medical sort of choice that you make throughout the day. So yeah, society is accepting microdosing, especially throughout.
Yeah, I think microdosing is something that is we really don't understand it here yet, But when you're taking small milligrammage of THC, it can really help with anxiety, with stress, as long as you're taking very low doses. How do you see the future of edibles in New York? Is there a big scene there? Do people have edibles parties? What's the vibe like?
So what's funny is New York is still underground, right? So the legislation's been passed for medicinal purposes only, and what's available is really small in terms of a variety. But what we're going to see is we're in an area called the tri-state area, which is New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. They're all really linked together, so we'll see legislation that'll pass in all three states. And I think at that point, it'll be huge. Right now, we're seeing huge booms in the CBD market and sort of these fake edibles. But the marketplace is flooded with edibles from California, Colorado. So I'd say it's already here. It's just a matter of legislation keeping up with it.
Okay. And in terms of dosing and consumer knowledge, does the general consumer have an understanding of dosing? Is it something you guys are familiar with? Because it certainly is something we are really behind on here. And has there been, does the industry self-regulate? Is it, are the packages well labeled? Are people aware about dosing? Is it something that you talk about?
Yes, so that's a really good point. The legislation here is really, really strict. So, the package everything has to basically delineate how strong it is. And so we're big proponents of ensuring that the consumer knows exactly what they're getting. In terms of the education of the people here, I think they are understanding what the dosage sort of signifies. As I speak to people that have been doing this for a while, we'll talk milligrams. And so that to me sounds like an educated client, an educated consumer. And I think that'll continue to evolve. But there's a big bridge still, both with science, and with the experience to kind of get to a more exact dosing.
Dosing is key. We talked about that just before you came on. I think that, the trick with edibles is patience. You have to be patient and you have to try. You can take an edible and 2-3 hours later take another edible on top of it, as long as you can start to measure yourself. But it's not like hitting a joint or a bong, which is immediate. There's science behind it. So you have to really think about those things.
Yeah, and one further point, just every person has an individual experience with the product, with any product. So it's really hard to say this is what everyone's going to feel like. So just keep that in mind, I think, in educating people that they should start small, and work their way up to a comfortable level.
Totally. Before you go, just what are the most popular edibles in New York? Well, apart from your chocolate, what's everyone get their hands on?
So America is a big sugar-based society, so we really do a lot of gummies. There's a lot of sugar-based, edibles out there on the market, and they're all over the map. And we're really an unregulated sort of an industry in terms of just there's so many people out there, so many different products. I wouldn't say there's one stronger than the other. I think it's still the wild, wild west. One thing about Scandalous is we're looking to be the first national company to produce chocolate, hopefully as legislation eases from state to state.
Which is supposed to happen in the next few weeks or the next few months, I hear.
Months, we're hoping. Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. Just lastly, there are some really big edibles brands, but there's also quite a small or a healthy boutique industry.
Yes, absolutely. You're seeing the crossover into massage oils and into wellness, both in the THC and the CBD capacity. So we're starting to see, how cannabis is being introduced into beauty products and, again, wellness components. So that's pretty interesting to see what comes next. And again, it's continued to evolve. Yeah.
Okay. Exciting space. Next time I'm in New York, I'm going to come and sample some of your chocolate. I mean, I guess the advantage you have at the moment in most states in America is you can walk into a dispensary and literally buy anything. It's properly labeled. You can get advice on it. We haven't quite got to that point here yet, but that must be quite interesting. Do you have many dispensaries? Are you in your area where you live?
No, in this area we have medicinal dispensaries. So in the state where I'm at, but for example, Massachusetts has quite a bit. Seattle has like 500. California has thousands. So, it's still growing. It's still small. But here, personally, we still work underground in New York City, believe it or not.
Okay. I had one more question for you. What is so areas can differ culturally. Are there certain types of edibles that are big in, say, New York? Is there a difference culturally to LA? I know in LA that the beverage market is very, very big. Do you find that the beverage market is growing in New York?
I'd say all around. Across the board, New York is just a giant consumer of all products that are cannabis related. So, again, I can't speak to one in specific one because, again, there's so many flooding this market sort of underground that it's kind of hard to kind of pick one out. But in California and in Colorado, they're much more stable markets, and there's quite a bit there as well.
Okay. And the beverage market, what kind of beverages are people consuming over there?
Well, both. So there's alcohol-based energy drinks, and then a fruity, healthy kind of situation as well. So anything really. Again, it's the Wild West. They're looking and experimenting to put it in about anything they can get their hands on. Yeah.
So it really is still the Wild West in some ways.
It really is. It really is.
Amazing. Miguel, thank you so much with Scandalous Chocolates in New York. We really appreciate your time, and your chocolate looks amazing. So I look forward to trying it out when I land on your fair shores again soon.
We look forward to it. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Take care. Cheers. Good evening, guys. Good evening.
Hey, Trenton.
How you doing?
Good evening, Trenton.
For people to join us, but while you're here, I'll introduce you. In the middle, we have Ruth from Thrive Chocolates. I've been seeing Thrive all over the place. You're doing a fantastic job of getting the brand out there, or CBD based. And then we have Chef Julian Gabriel, who is a cannabis chef. So super happy to have you on. Thank you for joining us. And then we have Tumi, who is coming on. She runs an edibles company. We also have Liz. Both of these companies you see are coming on anonymously. They sell THC products. So part of having them on is so that we can understand and get a deeper understanding and explore the underground THC market, which is growing incredibly at the moment. Ruth, I'm going to start with you. So you've been at this quite a while now in terms of making edibles in the cannabis space, but mainly CBD. How have you found how's it going? Are people open to it? Do they understand what an edible is? What's the general feedback you have on your products?
Definitely. There's definitely an increase in people wanting to get the plant. And I've been making this product since 2016. I used truffles, and then to get more product to a bigger range of people, I made a retail Thrive chocolates. So, and then I've sold over 7,000 in the last year. So there's definitely a demand for it, and I think it's really just about education and the right marketing and helping create that bridge so that people can, just really in cannabis in a non-smoking way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and do you find a lot of people, CBD is all the rage at the moment. It's there's a lot of buzz about it. You find that a lot of people are using chocolate instead of like a tincture?
Chocolate's probably the best way to get medicine into the body, because cacao in its most like organic or high quality form is a medicine carrier in its own form. So if you're putting cannabis in there or scandalous or something else, it's got a much better way of the body absorbing it. And tinctures are also great, but I think when you're mixing high content sugar, or if you're making very sugar sweets with cannabis, the body's first got to process the sugar before the cannabis.
Yeah. Okay. We just put a poll up. Have you ever had a bad edibles experience? And it's moving backwards and forwards. Sadly, 54% have actually, oh my gosh, yes, and 45% no. And that's exactly why we're doing this webinar, guys, because I love edibles. I think they're so amazing. And we don't want to see people having a bad experience. You know, it hurts our industry. It has an impact on the general population. It's sitting on 50-50 now. It's hovering around the 50 mark. So half the people on this webinar have had a bad experience. Thankfully, I haven't had a bad experience. Jules, have you had a bad experience on edibles?
I mean, ever since I started doing my trials in cooking, obviously, I had
some trial and error.
Out and try sativa and indica, and exactly, there's sometimes that it has a side effects if you're unknown and uncertain about what you're taking. You need to be pretty sure what you're putting in your mouth and into your body before you can do anything. And that's why you have a bad experience, because people obviously, like you said earlier, they don't know what they're doing. So I've had a few in my past.
Yeah. So you actually cook. You do sort of high level cooking with proper meals. How do you dose? What's the process you have for dosing?
Fortunately, the owner of the restaurant, he's got some scientists that works and gives me specific to my needs, obviously based on the research that I've done. When it comes to THC, obviously that's a big red tape at the moment in the industry with all the laws and the regulations. So it's quite hard for me to actually put out set amounts with that. Obviously, with personalized use, when somebody invites me to their home to do private chefing, then I can incorporate it any amount I want, because they're not buying it, they're growing it at home, and I'm incorporating it in whatever food regulations.
The demand, is it increasing?
It is increasing, definitely increasing. A lot more people are getting involved also from the CBD side because of the laws that's helped that. So it makes it easier for us to use CBD products, oils, butter, coconut oil. That's all infused with CBD. It's on the regulations, obviously.
Okay, great. I want to move on to our anonymous guests. Liz, you've been running an edibles company for some time now, and they're doing very well with it. The demand seems to be increasing monthly at the moment. How has that been going for you?
Well, we've been growing basically the moment we brought out our edibles. It's hit the ground running, and it's just been growing and growing and growing. Over the past year, especially through lockdown, of course, we've also seen several other edibles companies popping up as well, which is fantastic.
One of the things I respect about what you guys do is you're incredibly meticulous when it comes to dosing, sourcing the cannabis that you put into your product. Is that something that you've always been into? I mean, you understand it's a big responsibility.
Yes, no, well, I mean, if you look at the stats on the side, have you had a bad experience? It's even now, but it would appear that a lot of people have had bad experience. And I personally feel that is because they have been guided incorrectly. Either the packaging didn't state, how much they were dosed with, or some form of guidance. If you're lightweight, if you don't consume cannabis often, take between 2 to 10 milligram. If you consume cannabis several times a month, you can consume more. So yeah, people definitely need guidance, and you can do that through packaging.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some of the products that are moving at the moment? So just tell us about the range you have and what the most popular are.
Well, look, from us, what we currently do is items that have quite long shelf life. So we are looking at gummy bears, chocolates, slabs, more crispy treats. Mostly products that have at least 2 weeks plus shelf life. What I feel is lacking a little bit is more savory products.
Okay, so effectively edibles at the moment are all sweet, yeah?
Yes. It's you can't exactly go and open a shop and can't market too big. So anything with short shelf life won't be practical.
Nice. Tumi, you're based in Johannesburg, also running a successful sort of underground, for want of a better word, company. What's the demand like in Johannesburg, and what kind of products do you do?
Geez, the demand has been insane, because in the 4 months that we've been open, we've done 1,000 orders. So I'd say there's a pretty big demand, and the kind of products we do are, as the other anonymous guest said, are more the sweet stuff, but I'm more into the baked goods. So, I've got like your banana loaves and your biscuits, and things that you can freeze, things that you could buy and freeze. And I'm seeing that a lot of people are moving away from your traditional brownie, which was, the stalwart of this movement for a very long time. Wow. And, Viva the brownie. But I see people are moving away from that quite a bit, and being more adventurous with the flavors and the tastes that they are playing with. One of the products that we just got into is ice cream. We've got a vegan ice cream made with coconut oil, also infused. It's one of the things that we've been playing with. So, like I say, the product range is growing quite fast.
Okay, and how do you distribute the stuff? That's obviously not legal. How do you distribute it? Do you drop off at people's houses? Are you couriering it? How's it actually getting to people?
I have an online store.
Okay.
And a courier company.
Yeah.
And I mean, nobody said anything yet, so.
I mean, that's why at the end of the day, the demand is there, whether the or the industry like it or not. The demand's not going away. And my concern about the industry at the moment is the longer we leave regulation, the longer we don't allow people to participate in the space, the more the underground is going to grow, especially in light of the pandemic. People needing to make a living, people are hustling to make a living in whatever way they can. And the demand is clearly there. So if we don't come up with some kind of regulation that is favorable to people who are in the industry, the underground industry is going to grow and rocket. And the challenge with that is that it's unregulated. I saw a brand recently who were touting the fact, I won't mention the brand, they were actually selling 100 milligram juice bottle, which I personally think is way too high. Well, it is way too high. In a sweet shop, a big South African sweet chain. They had a video going into the shop, and in this sweet shop, they had a fridge with all this juice. I actually tried to find the video to show everybody tonight, but they've been banned off Instagram. Go figure. But effectively, showed a real lack of understanding of edibles and the dangers around edibles. Effectively. It's psychoactive. It affects your judgment. It affects your motor neurons and your ability to move. So I think it's super important that we watch out for those things. Ruth, I wanted to just talk to you about the product that's put into edibles. I know you have experience with making your own THC edibles for personal use. But when you're coming to using the product, what do you decarboxylate flour? Do you get isolate in or distillate? And what's your opinion in terms of using sort of the full plant extract or using sort of distillate and isolate?
So yeah, we've been using the full spectrum whole flower extract for the past 5 years. And for me, I just feel that this plant is so beautiful as is. It doesn't need to be stripped apart and isolated. Sure, use it for scientific purposes, but when you give it to people, putting it in food, you want to be using full spectrum extracts. It's not just about THC and CBD. There's also amazing other parts of the plant that are so important.
I mean, a lot of the products on the market at the moment, which are purely designed, for just getting high, are using isolate at the moment. I'm gathering, if you're going to use THC for medicinal purposes, I personally don't believe in isolate for medicinal purposes. I think you have to have the full broad spectrum of all the terpenes and the flavonoids. So would you agree with that? Do you think that for a medical reason you need the full spectrum?
Absolutely, yeah. I don't really understand. I feel like it's a bit of a profit or a marketing gimmick if you're trying to connect people with cannabis, but you're using isolates. Yeah, that's just my personal opinion.
I guess it's also what's available on the market as well, because a lot of isolate is coming in from overseas, and you sort of take what you can get. But no, interesting perspective. Jules, some of the private sort of dinners you're doing, quite upmarket, big fancy houses. Are you finding that there's different levels? That the restaurant's probably a little bit different with the CBD stuff. But are you cooking for superstars and actors and famous people? And what kind of people are you cooking cannabis food for? Jules, you're just on mute. You just need to put your mic on. Top left.
Is that on?
Yeah, there we go.
I don't know how it got off. Anyway, sorry about that. I was going to say, it's a little bit difficult now with the COVID that hit us. Before COVID, I was doing a lot more dinners and a lot more people I was obviously being invited to. And that's saying, obviously, the restaurant now as well has been closed until further notice, obviously trying to deal with the COVID issue. But I was getting pretty much all spectrums, all race, all cultures. A lot more people are getting involved, and a lot more people are asking more questions, which is quite great. And yeah, I have been cooking for quite a few people, of course, rich and famous.
So it's all walks of life.
All walks of life, to be honest with you. And the one thing I noticed why this is becoming so popular is especially for like the people you're saying that's got a lot of money and a lot of own businesses and in the structure. Inhalation and smoking leaves a scent behind, so lots of them can't do it. Where with the edibles, there is no trace of it. If you know what you're taking and you're taking things in measurements, you can actually take it and go into a meeting and you're pretty much fine. And that's what's helping a lot, especially with the meals at home as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to recognize that you can microdose on THC in small amounts. But there comes that border where if you take too much, you can't really function like you should. So I certainly wouldn't advise taking 10 milligrams and going to work, although I know there's people out there that do that. But if you're taking, 1 to 2 milligrams just to take the edge off, it's the same as other relaxation methods. And I think as we start to understand the edibles in more detail, we realize that they can really help you. And this is the thing, when you're smoking, you can have 2 or 3 drags and you can control it more. With edibles, you can't. So when you're in, you're in. In it for a long time. We just ran a poll. Are you aware that cannabis edibles can also be used as medicine? 95% of people said yes. 4% said no. The poll we ran before that also just asked people about whether it was smoking or edibles, what was their preference. Smoking was only slightly higher, so edibles is definitely on the increase. We also have a course giveaway. So for those of you who don't know, we run a Cannabis Academy. We have all kinds of courses. So we have chosen a winner, and the winner of our course is Zaida September. So Zaida September is the winner of the course. So congratulations. We'll be in touch with details. There we go. So we'll be in touch just to give you some more details on that. Thank you. We're also going to be giving away some Thrive chocolate. So there's all kinds of things that are going on. And we'll take some questions from the audience. I just want to go back to our two anonymous. Thanks. First of all, thank you so much for joining us. I know that we've kept you anonymous for legal reasons and to protect you, but we really do appreciate your time. Let's talk about the dosing. So I know that Liz, that it's something you put on your labels. You're having your products tested in labs. Have you always done that, or is that something you've evolved into?
That's more something we evolved into. Basically, when it comes to guiding people as to dosing, we follow quite a lot of, the countries where it is legal. So they've worked through trials, especially from Colorado. So say, for example, if you look at THC, previously you spoke about edibles that's dosed a little bit too high, either 100 milligrams, 200 milligrams, or you even get some that's 1,000 milligrams. Now, what they basically recommend is that to portion a THC edible, it's about 10 milligram per portion, so that you can avoid accidentally overdosing. So say, for example, you can have a chocolate bar and it can be 100 milligram, but divided into 10 pieces. So then, it makes it extremely easy to know the amounts that you're going to digest in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're getting your stuff lab tested now and putting, I know the packaging has all the dosing protocol. No, you've got warning signs in there about no kids, which is super responsible. Do you think that the edibles industry in South Africa in general is just not taking that seriously?
Definitely. There's a few things, not just only, I would find that basic knowledge, if you give an edible to somebody, it has to state exactly how much it is dosed. There's no question about that. But more than that, they should also start looking at expiry date, a list of ingredients that is included, and perhaps even a batch number, so that should something go wrong, you can pull all of the items from that batch back.
Yeah, absolutely. That's super important. To me, are you at that point where you're lab testing stuff? Do you put labels onto your products?
I am not. For a while, I've been letting the ancestors guide me. No, not quite like that. But I mean, the different strains of wheat that I get in, I'll always try to make a batch of things with them to know exactly what, because we never really know what we're getting, and how strong the dose is and how potent the plant is. So I always try to make like a batch for myself and just see with friends also who are stoners, just for them to kind of suss it out, and then I'll reduce that.
Yeah, so you have a few guinea pigs.
Yeah. We're all guinea pigging at the moment. But lab testing is the ultimate dream, It's just that this is a hobby that quickly became a business. So we are getting into the little processes now as things calm down.
But you obviously understand dosing as you've got into it. Do you make your customers aware about dosing? Do you educate them on that?
I do. I'm very interactive with my customers on WhatsApp. So I'll always try to ask them, about how much they smoke, if they smoke at all, how bad their trip was. I'll try to ask quite a few questions to understand who they are. And I'll try make a batch tailored for them, because I bake everything myself. So I'll try reduce, or if they say I'm a regular stoner and nothing gets me, I'm completely broken, then, I'll try to get them something a little bit stronger. But yeah, I try custom make each product. Okay.
And in terms of the kind of distribution, you've got people from all over the place in Joburg buying them, yeah?
Throughout the country.
Okay, throughout the country. Okay, so you ship to the whole country.
I courier to everywhere.
I think it's fascinating how this industry is just growing underground, And the irony is, though, is when it's not dissimilar to places like the States. I think I heard a stat the other day that 70% of cannabis sales in California are still illegal. So the legal market there is actually still relatively small. I do know that in Canada, that there is literally about to be a crossover between the legal and illegal market. The illegal market is still slightly bigger, the underground market, but it's about to cross over. So very similar to what happened in the music industry, where people were pirating music, and then eventually people stopped pirating music it became more readily available on platforms like Spotify. So I think it is an evolution. What we've just got to make sure is we don't have too many casualties on the way. I want to do a quick promo. So we do have a promotion for all of you attending this particular webinar on our Cannabis Fundamentals bundle course, which is a course that covers, it's an online self-study course for 20-25 hours, and then you join Zoom classes. And one of those Zoom classes over the 4-week period actually goes very deep into edibles, the different types of edibles, the impact they have. So it explores those kind of things. So if you take the promo code down on the side, that promo is over 24 hours. The next class starts in, I think, 2 or 3 weeks. So if any of you are interested in studying more and educating yourself, please do that. Just want to see what the last poll was. Are you high now? Sadly not. Hell yes, I am. What was the question again? So 34% right now are flying high on a Wednesday night. So I hope you are enjoying the information that you're getting. The 65% of you that aren't, and maybe you save it for the weekend or after the session. We'll take a few questions in a minute, but I just wanted to check in with you guys. What would advice would you give to somebody? So Ruth, you're obviously in commercial stores. You've been in that space for a while. What advice would you give to somebody who is buying edibles for the first time? What are the sort of telltale signs that they look for? What are the things they should avoid?
I think it's really important to look at your ingredients. If it's just plain, you're buying a product that's got isolate in it. And yeah, definitely I mean, I'm making a chocolate with my intention for people to microdose. So I'm taking 3 different very powerful things, which is chocolate, cacao, opens your heart. I'm putting the cannabis in for fiction, and I've got all the multi-mineral ups your life force. So without having THC in the product, you're getting all kind of benefits, but not getting stoned. So definitely look out for how many milligrams are in there, where is it made locally, and of course, what kind of plant extract is being used. Especially in food, I really think full spectrum is the way to go, and we don't need to do it excessively. If you're having small amounts on a frequent basis, it's way better for the body. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're obviously approaching it from a fully health perspective. I often say that even from a recreational perspective, I believe that cannabis still has medicinal benefits. So even if you're getting high because you just want to get out of it, I believe it really can help with perspective. So I see even recreational cannabis as medicinal. But I think if you're taking it for a specific ailment, I think it's super important that a list of ingredients, that what you're eating. If you're taking something to deal with pain or something medicinally, you might not have some big fat piece of chocolate cake. You might want to take something that has other healthy ingredients as well. So I think the approach is very different. Guys, how do we self-regulate this industry? Because the governments aren't going to do it. The powers that be, are not really aware of what's going on. How do we, as a cannabis industry, self-regulate to protect the consumer and to ensure eventually when recreational cannabis does become legal, which it will at some point, how do we make sure that the boots don't come down on us and we've actually set ourselves up as an industry to make sure that people take us seriously and that there are no casualties? Anyone want to? I'll put that out to the panel if anyone wants to answer that.
Well, I would definitely recommend that we seek advice from those that have been doing it for a while. So as mentioned previously, like you mentioned previously, actually, leafly.com, there is so much information available on that website. Make use of it. When it comes to another perspective, packaging, there's packaging available in every shop that we walk into. So get ideas from there. What information is legally required from us to give clients when you sell them something? So if we can just follow rules that is already put out, it would help, at the end of the day, we won't be a danger to the potential legalization of this industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's very similar to the alcohol industry that have bodies set up to self-regulate. The more responsible we are as a community, the easier be when things start to change. We're going to give away 2 hampers, some Thrive hampers. I have the winners. We have Melissa. Is it Hinrichsen? So Melissa Hinrichsen and Komotso Mapato. You have both won Thrive chocolate hampers. Congratulations. Well done. Cool. We're going to take a few questions. Let me just have a look here. So we have, here's a question from Carla. Can you make a variety of edibles with rosin? Who wants to answer that?
Yeah.
Sorry, with what?
With rosin.
Rosin.
You want to take that, Ruth?
Well, that's probably like the best. I'm using an extract, like a thick extract, but rosin is much easier to use, especially edibles. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
You need things to homogenize properly. Yeah.
Another question from Johan Human. I mean, what we didn't talk about at all is that you can decarboxylate cannabis flower and then you strain it at home. But there's a question here: what is the best decarb method with edibles? Is there a specific method? I know you can put it in the oven. Is there a method that anybody else uses? What do you, Tumi, what do you do?
I put it in the oven on very low heat, for an hour or so. The basic good old method, in the oven.
Yeah, that's it. I find that's the best as well.
Yeah. Decarboxylating yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Liz, you use isolate and product that you get in, I believe.
We use mostly distillates or canna butter. I would say the main secret is just never let it exceed 100 degrees. You can use it in the oven, on the stove, however, just don't burn the terpenes.
Cool. There's a question here. My question is with SA Law from Jax. How much edible products are you allowed to have? You need a lot of bud to make decarboxylated oil. The first answer to the question is 0. Your THC-wise, you are not allowed to have THC products available on the market. In terms of CBD, each package cannot contain more than 600 milligrams, and each dose cannot contain more than 20 milligrams, which I have a massive issue with because I don't think that you should be dosing or putting restrictions on dosing of CBD because CBD is non-toxic. And also, if you're taking CBD for ailments, 20 milligrams generally for anything sort of semi-serious is too low. So I think that those restrictions are pretty ridiculous. Hopefully, in time they'll lift. Another one here. I have a unique sugar-free THC nougat in 3 different strengths. I'm looking to create a sales channel. Anyone interested? Right. We'll come back to you on that. One more question here from Sifiso. I recently bought organic hemp powder from Discam. Please give some examples of edibles that you can make from organic hemp powder. So that's a very good question. So hemp powder obviously has a lot of medicinal benefits, very healthy for you, but it's not CBD unless it's a CBD strain, and it's not THC. Ruth, maybe you could answer that.
Well, I mean, hemp is such an amazing superfood as is. It's full of omega-3 and 6. So if you're using just the health seeds or you're using powder, maybe like healthy date balls, or you want to put it in your smoothie, you're still getting a nutritional medicinal benefit. Obviously not as potent as taking 20 milligrams of CBD.
Yeah. Tabo's got a question. It's for you, Jules. He goes, when you're cooking with THC,
He just left.
we've lost him. He'll come back. I'll ask you guys this. Jules, you still there?
Yeah.
I'm still there. I lost you for a bit, but I'm here now.
Don't run away. When you're cooking with THC, the question is, can you taste it? Can you actually taste the cannabis in the food that you make?
To be honest with you, a lot of the times you can't, depending on what you're using, because you get quite strong elements and food products. And with CBD, you need a carrier. So the carrier would be olive oil. So the oil would be quite pungent, depending how strong the oil is. Obviously, with the cacao that they used, when of the live hemp plant itself, you will taste it a bit more. But when you're breaking it down into your isolates and into the
I think we've lost Jules. Yeah, we've lost you there, Jules. Sorry. Ruth, in your chocolate, can you taste the CBD?
Yeah, you can.
Sorry.
Yeah, we lost you for a sec, Jules. Guys, to me, Liz, can you taste it?
No,
Not too
as
much.
far as I know.
No.
Sorry, go Liz.
Generally not. Yeah?
No, generally not. Not too bad, no.
No, yeah, I'd say no. I'd say no.
I think
If you can, there's a problem.
Yeah. We've got a question here. How about using hash for spices, sauces, and marinade? That's from Gomo. Jules,
That
maybe
sounds like a plan.
Yeah. Sprinkle
That
some
sounds
hash
good,
on the
actually.
fry, on the steak.
That sounds so good.
No, I can't say I agree. That does not sound delicious at all.
I think the thing to also remember is that, cannabis in its raw form does not get you high. So if you eat the cannabis bud, it hasn't been, the THC hasn't converted. So that's why cooking with cannabis is really popular. I want to talk about dosing. We've got a few minutes to go. So we put a poll up. Do you find dosing confusing? 36% of people said yes, it makes my mind boggle. Other people said no, but sometimes I use a calculator. So I think that we talked about dosing early on, and I think Leafly, as you mentioned, Ruth, which I showcased before we came on. Just to in your experience, I mean, I have my experience. Different people have different experiences. What is from a THC perspective? Maybe, Liz, maybe you can answer that. What would you advise people in terms of a dose for a beginner and a dose for a seasoned professional cannabis expert?
Okay, so once again, this is information that we have drawn from all over the world. We follow the leaders. Now, for a newbie who basically has never consumed cannabis before, we would recommend between 1 and 10 milligrams. Weight of the person also plays a role. If it's a larger male, 10 milligrams. And then intermediate, if you consume cannabis several times per month, you can say between 11 and 30 milligrams. If you are expert, you consume cannabis several times per day, you can say 50 milligrams plus. The thing with experts are, say for instance, people who smoke dabs, they have a very high tolerance. So 10 milligram isn't going to do anything with them even after 2 hours. So they would need a higher dose. Yeah.
And do you find that people are aware of these dosings, or are you really having to educate everybody?
Well, I mean, we go as far as putting the label on the edible, but not everybody chooses to read it. So we have had some funky WhatsApps come through and say, what do I have to drink? Am I dying? Should I go to the hospital?
Yeah. I mean,
yes.
I don't think anybody who's had a bad edibles experience doesn't have a chuckle afterwards, but while you're in the middle of that experience, it can be pretty horrendous. I was with him the other day when I was up in Joburg, and he was an older gentleman, and he was taking actually drops. So in an ingestible format, he was told to manage how many drops he put in his tongue. He couldn't feel how many drops were going onto his tongue, so he had too much of concentrated THC and ended up in hospital. He chuckled about it now, but he thought he was going to die, and really seriously anxious from edibles. And the problem with that is when you have a bad experience once, it puts you off. And I find, do you find that people are buying edibles just to get out of it, or they want to try THC food to experience relaxation? What are the primary drivers behind people actually wanting to try edibles?
I can honestly say sorry, who are you speaking to now?
No, you go, Liz, and then Tumi, it'll be great to have your opinion.
From our side, it's very much 50-50. Half of the people it's for medicinal purpose, and then the other 50% it is people who either don't like smoking, it stinks, or that it makes them paranoid, so they prefer eating, or they just want to kick back on the couch because every day feels like Monday.
Yeah. So you are getting people who are actually buying them for medicinal purposes, yeah?
50%, yes.
Okay. Wow, that's quite a large number. Julie, you having the same, or is it just the party guys?
No. It's very few party guys, actually. It's been interesting with me. I'd say 90% of my customers are Black women. And I'm finding that there's a very big interest in people that wouldn't be open to it, like Black women in your 40s, 50s, 60s, who are now dabbling and trying, because like I make a range of teas, CBD teas. So they'll buy it and they'll be very excited that, oh my God, it's cannabis, and they'll call their friends and have a little tea party. So it's been quite interesting that that's the demographic that is my customer base mostly. And people are not using it for partying. It's less medicinal for me. And it's more for relaxation and just people unwinding, because it is a business that started in lockdown for us. Yeah. And everybody was quite high strung. Yeah. So I think people know that cannabis will do this for you, and the way I packaged it became less. There's a Tswana word for it, which is matekwane, which is a really not so great word for weed or cannabis, so it's becoming less that. And it's been interesting for me that our moms and aunts and, older people are trying it, because for a while it was not that kind of party. Yeah.
I think that is also the difference, when you do consume THC via the edible format, as long as you're not taking too much, it can be very relaxing. You don't always get that from smoking or other methods. I think it's growing in popularity. We've got a few minutes left. What are your hopes for the future in terms of regulation and this market taking off? Jules, I'm sure you'd like to open a THC restaurant at some point.
Sure, man. Yeah. Definitely would like to open THC just so that we can give them a complete experience from a dining experience, and also take them through the ups and downs to make it a complete different night that they can enjoy. And at the same time, they're walking away feeling great and better, knowing that there's some medicinal sides that they're being taken with the THC as well. So definitely look forward to that happening, for sure.
Liz, to me, I mean, you guys must, I guess, have frustrated moments where you're running this business, making a living, and not being able to take it above the board. What do you think needs to happen, and what are your hopes for the future? To me, maybe start with you.
I mean, I'd like nothing more for it to be legalized. It's the feedback and the reviews that I get from customers it's like I said, it's less party. It's less of a party thing for me. It's people actually using it for their well-being. People saying, I haven't slept in about a month, and for the first time I'm sleeping. And I don't see why that would be an issue. I don't see why that would not be legalized and allowed, and it's quite frustrating. But we are working around it and doing what we can with what we have. And I think that's all I have for now.
Liz, I think, Ruth, you're obviously selling legally CBD chocolate into places. Liz, you've got a proper organized, structured business with proper labeling, cooking. It must be quite frustrating for you. What are you hoping to see the future hold?
Well, honestly, I'm hoping that people just, as this industry is going, with or without permission, people must just keep being responsible and not risk us to lose everything at the end of the day. Hoping one day soon open a shop, open a cannabis club, and just get permission to do it openly and market as we please.
Yeah, well, let's keep the industry is moving forward rapidly with or without legislation, but I think there's a lot of people who just want to be legit, and the demand is there, the consumer is demanding, and it's not going to go away. So the powers that be regulate and embrace this, I think the better for everybody. Guys, we've run out of time. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Anybody who's on the webinar, thank you for joining us on this evening. Don't forget that the Cheeba Cannabis Academy has all kinds of courses that you can do. Educate yourself. The industry is growing, and I think next year we'll really see the industry build into something that's going to be incredibly exciting. Guys, thank you for being guests tonight, and thanks for coming on. And happy edibles eating. Take care.
Cheers, everybody.
Bye, guys.